All right, welcome everyone. It's April 2024, and I should start with, well, first let me introduce myself. My name is Sharon Chaden Burks. I'm very happy that you're here for the Idea Networking session. And because it's April and I live in Ohio, we are having a bit of a freak out in Ohio about, oh my gosh, severe weather and tornadoes everywhere. There hasn't been any tornadoes yet that I know of. But if for some reason I drop out of the call or Nancy, one of our guest speakers, is actually very close to me, if either of us drop out of the call, Laura is going to continue on and I will join just as soon as I can, just in case, because you never really know. So we have two guest speakers tonight. Our first guest speaker is Laura MacNeil, and our second guest speaker is Nancie Hixson. And I'm going to put our agenda in the chat so you can take a look at that. And please write down your questions as you're listening to our guest speakers talk. You will have time to talk with them in the breakout rooms. I will also stay out in the main room if you would like to chat with me. And I don't think I have anything else to share, so I'm going to hand it straight over to Laura.
All right. So I'm Laura MacNeil, and as you can see in your document there, I'm a learning and development specialist in Canada. My voice is a little funny. I've just gotten sick, but I was too excited and I wanted to come tonight. So I had to make it happen. I don't think my voice sounds as cool as Phoebe's does on Friends when she tries to get sick um, to have that cool raspy voice. But I digress. Learning and development specialist, like I think most of you, if not all of you, I started out teaching. I'd kind of always wanted to be around learning. I like to help people. I did a lot of coaching early on. So that was kind of the first time I realized that there was a method behind the madness, that um, to break down a skill into smaller bits and teach people what you've got in your head, or teach people something, is actually quite a skill, and it's harder than it looks. So I did some coaching. Um, I went to university, kind of like I said, I'd always been wanting to be around learning, and I figured teaching was probably the way to do that. So I kept my options open in Canada. Anyway, you need to do a degree first and then do a teaching degree. So I took my degree, left it open so I would have enough electives to go into teaching. But I had itchy feet and I decided to do teaching English as a second language in Thailand. So I got a certificate in um, teaching English as a second language. And I really enjoyed that. And it was kind of my first introduction to teaching. I did that for a year. And so, pardon me. Um, so that really helped me recognize kind of the importance of saying things simply and using simple language and understanding maybe cultural motivations behind things, or that there can be um, misunderstandings between, oh, there you go. That if you say one thing in one culture, it might be something completely different in another. So kind of keeping that in mind as you're teaching. Um, then I came back to Canada, got my teaching degree, and went to UK. I taught there for a while. And then I came back and did a little teaching again in Canada, and then found an ad for instructional design. I'd never heard of it um, until I saw the job ad, and I applied for it, and I ended up getting the job, and and I love it. So if you don't know what instructional design is, it's kind of in the learning and development area, and it's what most of you probably do on a daily basis, really. You kind of design how you're going to instruct people so it's most effective. Um, so where I was, they did a lot of training for military, um, and there was less room for creativity and and kind of doing things your own way. It was very structured, and there were great people there. I did enjoy it. Um, and transitioning from teaching, it was awesome not to be on all the time. It was awesome to be able to have a hot tea or something and it still be warm when you're drinking it. Um, and you could go to the bathroom when you want it. So that was awesome as well. I really enjoyed that. Um, and let's see. And then um, part of my advice for you in a moment will be to kind of keep up on LinkedIn. You don't have to post a lot or anything, but maybe just have um, some buzzwords on there, or share a few things that you've seen on LinkedIn that intrigues you, or what you've been learning. Because my current role as learning and development specialist, somebody reached out to me and wanted to have a chat, and that's how I got this job. Um, and so in this role, I often revamp existing training to make it more effective and accessible. I will create new training. So I'm at, as well, a long-term care facility is what the company is. So my last role, I was one of maybe 30 to 50 instructional designers. And in this role, I was the only learning and development specialist. And so it was a big change, and there was lots of creativity and room to do things kind of um, however I thought would be best. And so lots of revamping training, creating new training, maybe onboarding, teaching people new computer programs, um, looking at diversity, lending expertise or tips on how to present, have a nicer PowerPoint or do presentations, facilitate training, brainstorm ways to gather learner feedback or measure course success, or increase completion rates, things like that. What else? Yes. Okay. Well, I've probably talked about me a lot, but um, for today, experiences interviewing. So Sharon, would you like me to just kind of go into advice I'd have now, I suppose? Not wait for the questions, just kind of dive in.
I
Is that
would,
easy?
here's what I would do. I would give probably my top advice right now, and then we'll go to Nancy, and then people can follow up in breakout rooms.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Top advice.
Um, so top advice, if you are looking for something in kind of the learning and development field, the instructional design field, I would say maybe look at what you're doing now and what do you enjoy most in your role. So maybe if you're doing teaching, do you enjoy like the planning for the year? Maybe you prefer something in like project management, or do you enjoy the facilitation aspect, or um, maybe the tech or things like that. What aspect do you like? And then maybe go for a role that is kind of in that area. So if it is instructional design, maybe adult learning principles, instructional design models. Um, but I would say the most important thing is communication and being able to work with others and be able to communicate with others. And I've got so much, and I'm trying to keep it short. I'll say working with others is one of the big things, and you'll get a question in interviews about working with SMEs, subject matter experts, and just kind of, I would say, build relationships with people, talk to people in your company, and get feedback. Let's see. You know what? I'll defer to Nancy for now, and save the rest for the breakout rooms.
Sure, sounds good. Let me see here. Nancy, there you are. Okay, Nancy is up.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. Um, Hi, everyone. My name is Nancie Hixson. I'm currently a project specialist at a nonprofit here in Dayton called Omega CDC. I'm working on a Promise Neighborhood grant that we were given from the US Department of Education, that we're calling the Hope Zone. So that's kind of what I'm working on now. Been here for about a year, but my previous roles were in instructional design. I've been in insurance and healthcare, and I was trying to think of kind of what kind of advice I wish I had had at the time that I didn't get. And that was kind of how to tailor my resume for instructional design, not having had that previous experience, and in interviews. But I'll kind of start with what led me to instructional design. So my dad used to be the director of distance learning for a local college, but this was in the early 2000s. So like on Bring Your Daughter to Work days, it was wheeling a TV into the classrooms and putting in like a VHS tape of the instructor giving the lesson. And then students would mail their assignments into the instructor. And like that was distance learning as I knew it. Fast forward to when I was in college, and I really, really struggled. Like I failed a lot of classes. I was on academic probation, academic suspension. And when I finally came back to school after academic suspension, I just didn't want to go to campus like in person. So I wanted to take online classes, which I had never done before. So it took a lot of convincing to my academic advisors. And this first online class I took, I think it was like an anthropology course. And it was the very first course I've ever taken where I had an A as a final grade for the class. So like it was a big moment for me. I had never experienced that before. And that's just kind of what got me thinking about like, well, like, why did this help me? How do I learn? How do other people learn? And so like I Googled distance learning degrees because that's kind of how I had remembered it from my dad. And that's what brought me to instructional design. Um, you know, rest is history. But as soon as I found that, I immediately changed my associates to early childhood education. I ended up getting my bachelor's in instructional design and then my master's in curriculum and instruction. So, having all these past years of failing classes, hating school, hating learning, and then suddenly online classes was just kind of the magic ingredient. And I was able to continue my education. And I just really wanted to kind of bring that same experience to somebody else. I'm like, learning shouldn't be this hard. I had a really hard time. I didn't have much support, and I just wanted to, make it better for somebody else. So for me, instructional design came before teaching, which is a little different, but I have experience as a daycare teacher and also teaching English as a second language. I've taught in France and Taiwan. When it was time to start applying to these instructional design jobs, I had a lot of anxiety around like my resume and not having the title of instructional designer on that resume. I was worried about employers looking at, my past experiences negatively. Like the first job that was listed was daycare teacher. I'm just like, who's going to want to hire me? And then if I do get the, interview, how am I going to be able to relate to these scenarios and these questions they're asking me without having that experience? And, most of my working experience is as a security guard and as a janitor. So I just had a lot of negative self-talk when I was first starting. And this is going to sound really weird, but stick with me. But the answer to my problem was Kevin Bacon. So no, trust me. Have you ever heard of the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? Where like every, famous person is somehow linked to Kevin Bacon through like 6 or less degrees of separation. Well, I started viewing all of my past experiences like the 6 degrees of instructional design. And like that's just kind of what helped me. So like I was a security guard for an art museum. I started looking at it like, I was creating a safe learning environment for guests, or I would like talk to them and do like needs analysis by understanding what they were interested in and trying to give them like a personalized experience for what art pieces they can go look at. Um, I guess, or I would relate like past customer service experience to like how I would interact with like subject matter experts. And like that has helped me in interviews. And that's also what helped me to stop saying or like calling myself just a daycare teacher, because I used that a lot. And I've heard a lot of transitioning teachers do the same thing of like just a teacher. You can take that out. um, So, I mean, I know a lot of you are probably teachers looking to transition, but really, whatever your background is, you can probably relate it to instructional design. And you're not starting over in your career, like your past experience is still experience and it's relevant.
I would add on to that, Nancy, that when I made the switch into instructional design, that people were really interested in where I'd come from, because a lot of people come to this field from so many other areas. It's not like there was one path that brought everyone here. So when I said that I was an ESL teacher in my first career, and I did that for 13 years, people were like, wow, that is super cool. Like, how do you do that? Like, how many, like, do you speak all those languages? And what do you do when you have all these people in a room and they don't, it's their second language? And they just looked at me as an expert in that. And that was, I know that sounds silly, but like, I didn't really feel like an expert when I was around everyone who did the same thing. You know what I mean? And sometimes I didn't feel appreciated by the people that I worked for. But it was very different transitioning to this field where everyone comes from a different background. I worked with people that were broadcasters before, and Nancy was talking about that. Actually, Nancy and I have a little bit of a shared, I don't even know how to describe it. When the job that I transitioned to was with Sinclair Community College, and it was in the media production side of e-learning. And that was the, I don't know, the nexus between our lives, because your dad, which family member worked there where
Yeah, it was my dad. He was the director of when it was called distance learning there at Sinclair. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like when I started this job, I walked in and they had this shelf with like VHS tapes, and I was like, now what's going on here? Like try to explain like, well, once upon a time we sent out VHS tapes to people, and I'm like, do we still need to have? But it was like there's so much of that office that it's kind of like a museum where stuff just doesn't end up going anywhere because it doesn't need to be moved. So yeah, it's a strange world, but like I said, like people get into it, they're graphic designers before, or they were in broadcasting, or they were teachers. I had someone who was a dental hygienist who now is an instructional designer. So it's super cool when you see the richness that people bring to the profession, and it just makes a real fun learning environment. So um
Yeah. Before
yeah,
we
yeah,
before we break out and move on,
yeah.
I totally, Nancy and Sharon, agree with your experience. You don't feel like an expert maybe when you're amongst other teachers or other people doing the same thing you do, but suddenly you're working with other people who do different things, and they you're the expert, and it's interesting. But as well, and like your 6 degrees of separation, Nancy, I like that analogy, very nice. It's completely true, and as a teacher you think, oh, I only have teaching experience, and what is that going to get me, kind of thing. But there are so many skills that you use on a daily basis as a teacher that are helpful in almost any profession, and that line up with instructional design or learning and development. There are so many different avenues where you're maybe really niche and you're only working on one little aspect in instructional design or learning and development, or kind of everything. But giving feedback, creating courses and revamping them, differentiation, creating a psychologically safe place, things like that. So very interesting. And I agree 100% with everything you've been saying, Nancie and Sharon.
Awesome. It just started raining over here. So hopefully we make it through the end of the hour. So it's probably a good time to pause and do some breakout rooms. Okay, we are back. And before we get into our whole group Q&A, I want to let you know that the next time we're going to meet is Tuesday, May 7th, right? Right. Okay. This is April. Okay. May 7th from 7 to 8 p.m. And I've put the link to that registration. If you want to just get it done, you want to come, you can do that there. Also, I've put the feedback form on tonight's session in the chat if you want to leave me some feedback.
Question for Laura.
Mm-hmm.
You're based out of Canada. And I think my question is regarding working in different countries. Like, does your company work mainly within Canada or do you work with the States, and how does that work?
I missed the very start of that one. Was that for me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. My company is just Canada, but I'd worked previously doing teaching English as a second language. I couldn't quite hear your question. I think you're asking about my company and the ability to maybe work outside of Canada.
Yeah.
Right. Mine is kind of on site or hybrid. So right now, and with whom I'm working with now, and previously it was with we worked with military and stuff like that. So for security reasons, we had to be on site typically. But I think there are a lot of roles that are remote. However, I think there are more competition for that, those kind of roles. But I think there is opportunity to get a lot of remote work in instructional design. So I'm sorry, I don't really have an answer for you other than
That's okay.
at my role, I don't think I'd be able to work out of country.
I guess I have a question just for any one of you in general. Just learning about the theory is really interesting to me, and that's the part that pulls me in more so than the actual design aspect. I know that's obviously part of that, and I am learning courses through Articulate through Dublin Peck, or learning the program rather. But I'm wondering if there are job titles or types of jobs within instructional design that would focus more on the actual planning of the course versus the actual designing within the program.
I would say I think there are some companies or some positions that are very niche. So in my current role right now, I was essentially the only person. My manager as well would help out, but I was essentially the only person, so I was doing kind of everything. Maybe delivering content or creating it and putting it in a storyline and doing the instructional design aspect and everything like that. Maybe reviewing it, quality control, trying to get feedback, everything like that. But there are other roles, I think, where it can be very niche, and maybe it's instructional design would probably, off the top of my head, I can't think of a title where you'd get more of the design aspect, but not necessarily putting it in storyline. Instructional designer would probably be the title, but sometimes you can get a role where you are doing the designing and then somebody else kind of is the e-learning developer or the course developer. And I would, Sharon or Nancie or anybody else, can you think of another title that might concentrate mostly on the in the design aspect.
When
think
I
that-
was working in insurance,
I can't see. Nancy, are you talking?
yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, when I was working in insurance, I was just doing the like analysis and designing of the courses, and like my title was instructional designer. And we also had instructional developers, and they were the ones actually creating it and using the software. But then at another company, I still had the title instructional designer, and I was doing everything. So it just depends, I think, more on the company than maybe like the job title that's used. So it just kind of, you never really know what you're going to get a little bit when you type in all the different names for instructional design in the job search.
Mhm. Yeah, I would add on that I do what the planning side is basically what I do. I do the coordinating, the communicating, the planning, the building. So any it's such a weird thing to know that there's a job that exists to set up the learning, but not actually implement or deliver the learning, because that can be sometimes the most exhausting part for me is the hit the ground running. We're actually doing it. You guys, I'm teaching you, we're doing, oh, you have questions? Oh, wait, what? Oh, now we're off on this tangent over here. So that's, yeah, I would say that is what I do, is all the planning beforehand. But that's also something to clarify in the interview. Like, ask them, who is going to be doing this part of the job? Am I the only person on this team that is doing the work, or are there other people with me? In the chat. Oh, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt, but I thought I saw in the chat somebody mentioning something about doing like a 30-day trial, and I thought, I just got a message from Articulate today saying they're going to raise their price to $100 a year. And I mean, all the subscription are raising their prices anyway. I mean, but the big one was they're reducing that price from the academic discount from 50% to 25%, which is huge. But if you're already subscribing with the academic discount, you can keep your grandfathered in, so to speak. So you'll be able to keep the 50% as long as you stay with them. So anybody who hasn't done it yet and are thinking they probably are going to subscribe might want to do it soon. I think it's July. They said they're going to start. You might want to do it soon so you don't miss that, because that's a big discount. And the academic one, yeah, to get the academic discount, you just go on the Articulate website, and there's like, it was a little bit, I had to hunt a bit to find the options for some reason. But when you click at their options, there's two sides. There's a personal, and then there's, what's the other one? The teams, right? And I have a personal one, and then I did the 30-day trial and then realized, well, and then the academic one, as long as you are an educator of some kind, you just tell them it's like Adobe, you just tell them your institution, and as long as they verify that, they'll give you the discount pretty readily, and 50% is huge on that. So just, you might want to do it before 25% comes. That's a lot less attractive. So I just saw that and I thought I'd probably better mention it.
On the topic of Articulate, I know I've seen a couple times that people will create something for a portfolio and then they finish their 30-day free trial. Make sure you download the file or publish it to review, or publish it in, I can't remember now. I think you can publish it to like an offline version that you would be able to show somebody.
Canvas or something.
Make sure you save a copy of it, because otherwise it will be gone, like in Rise.
One question in the chat was if I would, Tony asked me if where to go? Would you search all titles on LinkedIn as opposed to one specific title? And I think it would really depend on how broad you want your search to be. If you're open to anything and everything, you can make it a really wide search. But if I really only am interested in being an e-learning developer, then you can be picky. it's your life. You don't have to take every job that's out there. It's more important. I mean, I'm of the mind frame that it's important to be happy in your work, but I also get that sometimes you just need a paycheck. I get that too.
And I suppose on that note as well, if you are a teacher, oftentimes you might be used to working lots of extra hours or paying for things with your own money, or, doing more than your job description. And
Mhm.
so it's important, I think, to set boundaries when you shift into another role, that you don't keep maybe burning yourself out.
Absolutely.
It's a good time to set some healthy habits.
We have just a couple minutes left. Any quick questions before we hop off here? There's some good chat in here about AWS. I've used that once before, but I didn't have a great enough need to continue to use it, but I did try publishing out there. It was like one Articulate presentation, just because I want to be familiar with the process. Any last?
I was just gonna ask, somebody put in the chat that you can do it in Google. Is it free for the Google bucket?
I've never done Google Bucket.
Or John, I guess John posted
Pennies.
that.
I only pay like 1 cent a month for my small storage in Google.
Sorry.
It says 0.01 on my credit card.
Oh, so funny.
Yeah, Amazon and Google just have a very similar, it's a very similar product. And you can have both if you want. Yeah, it's free or very, very cheap.
All right. Well, we are at 7:59 and my kids are, I don't know, they're in rare form. They're like, Mom, I want to go to bed. Well, they can't go to bed unless I tuck them in. So thank you for coming tonight. And no, not right now. I will see you guys back here May 7th from 7 to 8 p.m. Very much looking forward to it. And thank you so much, Nancie and Laura, for sharing your time tonight and your experiences. I'm so very glad that people choose to pay it forward to people who are trying to get into the profession. It makes such a difference, and I so appreciate you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.